What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. Now, this is part 2 of a video that I previously shared with you on my 10 greatest black fighters of all time, in my opinion. It is not to be judged. This video is for educational purposes only. And if you know anything about the videos that I have done in the past, or my way of thinking, you know that I judge, in this case, fighters based on the time in which they came. The only way you can specifically compare fighters, or even judge fighters for that matter, their career must be completed in full. And you have to judge them in the time in which they came. And I'm showing you 6 of the fighters that have been chosen by me. And if you notice, they come in different eras. Now, what makes an era, what makes a specific person behave the way they behave? Music is the art of all expressions. It's a universal language that appeal to all. Now, I talked about Peter Jackson, who is not in this video, but when Peter Jackson came, Dixieland was the art of expression during his time, the late 1800s. Jazz began in New Orleans, and it was a way of expressing the times that they were in. And that tradition is passed down from generation through generation. In the time of Jack Johnson, Bessie Smith had expressed herself based on the time in which she came. And there were relations and correlations that you can understand. Duke Ellington and Cab Calloway were regulars at the Cotton Club. Now, the Cotton Club was previously owned by Jack Johnson, though it was not called the Cotton Club. That name was given by Owen Matting. But Jack Johnson had owned the Supper Club, Club Deluxe, and was strong-armed by Owen Matting. Well, at that time, Jack Johnson had jazz musicians in his nightclub. It was a way of expressing the time and what was going on in your generation. Chick Webb was in the time of Joe Louis. And Chick Webb was a drummer who had spinal bifida. And he was a dwarf, hunchback. But could he play those drums? Oh. And he would hire Ella Fitzgerald. You see, the club that he played in was across the street from the Cotton Club. It was called the Savoy Manor. It was located on 141st Street. and Lenox Avenue. Cotton Club was located on 142nd Street and Lenox Avenue. And one of the most popular nights was when Benny Goodman's band had challenged Chick Webb and his orchestra. Ah, what a time that was. Everyone who was everyone was there that evening. In fact, you had 400 people standing outside of the Savoy Manor. They couldn't get in. That was a big deal. And at the Savoy Manor, Joe Louis and Marva Trotter they had a special table that was dedicated to them, whether they were there or not. No one ever sat at that table. It was in the front row. And when you walked up the steps of the Savoy Manor, you see pink walls, and behind the steps would be the dance floor. And there you could find the Nicholas Brothers. You can find many outstanding dancers doing the jitterbug, the Lindy Hop, and the swing. Well, Chick Webb was a phenomenal drummer, and Benny Goodman had a drummer who was phenomenal himself. And Benny Goodman was smart enough at one point to hire Lionel Hampton, who was on Vibes. And Lionel Hampton was, in my opinion, the greatest vibraphone player of all times. And Chick Webb did a number on that band. He was 25 years old. He passed away at the age of 30. And during those days, you would have Glenn Miller and Artie Shaw, Jimmy Dorsett, and his brother, Tommy Dorsey, still last name, Benny Carter, and Woody Herman. Now, Count Basie would challenge Chick Webb as well. You see, Chick Webb at that time was the greatest drummer known in Harlem. Joe Louis would knock out Billy Conn. June 22nd, 1938. It was the greatest night in Harlem, New York. And when Joe Louis defeated Max Smelling, he would walk across the Willis Avenue Bridge. And he would find himself at the Savoy Manor. That's where he went. And the party they had that night. You see, during Joe Louis's time, Jack Johnson's time as well, but you took pride in what you wore and how you carried yourself. You took your hat off when you walked into an establishment. You made sure that your suit was completely pressed and starched. Your shoes would shine, as they say, shinier than a baby's backside. You would wear a tie, and that tie would have a dimple in it. And if you were in position to do so, you would have a gold pin sticking through that necktie. That meant a lot. You would wear wingtip shoes. If you really had the style going, it would be two-tone, perhaps black and white or brown and beige. And the suit obviously had to match the shoes you were wearing. But the hat, now we're talking some real business here. Now, Adams Hats was located next to Madison Square Garden, but in Harlem, 125th Street. There you would have Stacy Adams Shoe Store. And across the street from there, you would have another shoe store. It's called Florsheims. But Adams Hats was located there. And the hat you would be wearing when you wanted to make a statement would have a silk band around that hat. It was a Victoria hat. And you either have a buckle on the side of that hat, on the band, or you would have a feather. Now you're talking business here. And across the street from there would be London Fog to go over the suit based on the temperature that evening. Well, that's the era that Joe Louis, Jack Johnson, and Sam Langford, Harry Wills, Sam McVeigh, and even Muhammad Ali would come from. There was a sense of pride, and who you were identified your community. Now, what do I mean by who you were? It's how you carried yourself, who you were as a person. Your last name meant everything to you. So in the game of pugilism, you didn't avoid fighters. You didn't chuck and jive and say what you were going to do and never did it. You took on the greatest challengers and you saw to it that they understood who you were. Now, after a Jack Johnson fight, leading into Joe Louis's era, you find yourself at Birdland, which is located on 44th Street, or the Blue Note on 3rd Avenue, the Village Vanguard. And there you would see many great performers. You see the big band era. You would have from 16 to 32 men in the band. And many of your jazz greats came from a big band. Miles Davis. Now he would come from a very popular band. Charlie Parker, one of the greatest tenor saxophone players of all times. And you had men such as Lester Young, who used to take the mouthpiece and turn it sideways. You had John Coltrane, Charlie Parker. You had Benny Carter and many tenor saxophone players. And when you left the performances, it gave you a certain level of respect about you and your community. I read you and recited to you the records of these men. You know about the great fights that Muhammad Ali had with Zora Foley and Cleveland Williams. Those are his last two professional fights. You know, in 1964, he became a 22-year-old world heavyweight champion. You know that Sam Langford would win 22 astonishing matches with great fighters in his career, back to back. You know that Jack Johnson would become the first black heavyweight champion in 1908 when he would defeat Noah Brusso in Sydney, Australia. You know that Joe Louis would become the second black heavyweight champion when he would knock out Jimmy Braddock, although losing 10% of his earnings for the remainder of his career. In 1937, Chicago's Comiskey Park. You know that Joe Louis would be a 12-year reign heavyweight champion, 11 years and 8 months, 25 title defenses. You know that Sam McVeigh and Joe Jeanette, who was not in this particular photo, would have 3 astonishing fights in 1909 alone. And April 17, 1919, April 17, 1909, let me make the correction, 1909, those 2 men would put on, in my opinion, was the greatest heavyweight championship fight of all time. They were fighting for the colored heavyweight championship title. You see, these things meant something. You didn't have problems getting these men in the ring. You didn't have the game playing that you see. One man's not going to step into the ring because one man won't agree with one terms and conditions. What brought those men in the ring? Obviously, finances. But it was a sense of pride. That I'm coming up in a time when another man claims that he's better than me. And I've always stated, when you do not meet your legacy opponent, when a situation or a circumstance could have happened, I cannot place you in the same conversation of those who have done so. Lena Horne, Betsy Smith, Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, Anita O'Day. Many of them. Great female singers. They truly expressed themselves of what was happening in their time. And that's why their recitals, that's why their high notes and their low notes was as beautifully sounded as they were. You see, the time in which you come, you represent why you're here. And that's your reason for existence. Louis Armstrong in the Hot Five, Dizzy Gillespie, Cannonball Adderley, Art Tatum, Sonny Rollins, Illinois Jacquet, who was an outstanding, by the way, saxophone player, Little Jimmy Scott, and Buddy Tate, Herschel Evans, and Lucky Thompson, Don Byers, and Paul Gonsalves, Fletcher Henderson, and Lionel Hampton, Teddy Wilson, one of the greatest piano players, along with Earl Hines, that you can find. Coleman Hawkins, Lester Young, Charlie Parker, Illinois Jacquet, Zoot Sims, Dexter Gordon, Jerry Mulligan. But 1959 was when jazz had changed forever. David Rupper, Take 5, Time Out, was a brilliant record. Kind of Blue by Miles Davis, So What, was one of the greatest tracks of all times. You see, all these names that I mentioned to you left legacy because they were perfectionists. If you're going to be in this game, if you're going to represent your time and your era, then you have to put it all out in the line. In Joe Louis's era, every weight division were Hall of Fame fighters. Sam Langford, smaller men, you had Jack Blackburn, Dave Holly, Bobby Dobbs, Joe Gans, Joe Walcott, Fast Black. Many of them. Jeff Clark, the Joplin Ghost, Kid Monday, Eddie Anderson, you name them. He had to get through them. Jack Johnson was not going to be allowed to get a title shot with the white establishment in his era. Sam McVeigh had to hold back many fights to secure another one. Muhammad Ali had graduated from the Rome Olympic Games in 1960. And he would take on his legacy opponents, George Foreman, Joe Frazier, two to come to mind. Kenny Norton was in his way, and so was Eddie Terrell. Muhammad Ali made sure that he got in the ring, regardless of age, with Floyd Patterson. Sonny Liston was the man that was talked about. And although Ali needed the heavyweight championship title to prove his greatness, but he needed the fighter who had it and a name that was popular during that time. You see, that's boxing. And that's what makes you great. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. All great fights and all great fighters would never be forgotten on my channel. Now this video is for educational purposes. And I'm going to show you what greatness is.
Let me dig this jam once more, boy. Right on down to get it. Oh, boy. Gotta take my little kid. Now, kids, you hear those hep cats call. Come on, boys, let's have a ball. The Jim Jam jump it, the jumping jive makes you dig your jive on the mellow side. Hep, hep. Hip, hip. The Jim Jam jump is a silent jive. Makes you 9 foot tall when you're 4'5". Hep, hep. Hip, hip. Now don't you be that incorrect. Get hip, come on, and then you follow through. You get your study full. You make up the jaunty jumpers like the Gators do. Jim Jam jumpers and jumping jive makes you like your eggs on the Jersey side. Hip, hip. Hip, hip. The Jim Jam jumping jive makes you hep, hep on the Mahala side. Diddly, boodly, boodly, biddly, bumpity, goodly, giddly, bang, 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 da-da. Now I've told you about the jumping jive. Jim Jam jump the jumping jive. You got to take this mellow jive. Yes, yes, you dig it on the mellow side. A boodly, boodly, boodly boy. A boodly, boodly boy. Biddly, biddly, gay. Boodly, giddly, bumpity, gaga. A boodly, time, boy, coin, ticka, kind, boom, bump, a seedle, that's a boy.
Now, you were just watching Cab Calloway at the Cotton Club, and here you have the famous Nicholas Brothers. Now, the reason why I'm showing this, because this is what you went to go see after a Joe Louis fight. This is entertainment. Scrapbook Boxing. Thanks for watching. Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. All great fights, all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Peace. I'd like to thank in advance the content creator that was responsible for the video that I just showed you with the Nicholas brothers for educational purposes. The purpose of me showing you that, so you have a better understanding of the pride that existed during that time. Boxing is an art of expression in and out of the ring. Watch out for the next video. In my opinion, the greatest black light heavyweights of all times, top 10. And I'll go into further detail of what I mean by greatness. Thanks for watching. Scrapbook Boxing. Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Peace.